Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Pure Property Podcast. Thanks for joining us. This week's episode, we're going to be speaking about something that is very topical and at the forefront of a lot that is going on here in the UK, and that is the general election. Now, we're going to talk about this in the shape and form of looking at the two main parties, which is considered to be obviously Conservative and Labour. We're going to look at their manifestos that they've put out in terms of what they will do if they are in government, should they win the general election. And we're going to look at the property-focused part of the manifesto. So as property investors and people involved in property, how that could shape our future and potentially the property market should one of them get into power, or when one of them does get into power, obviously being the front runners there. And there's lots in the manifesto, and we've picked out, we haven't been able to cover all of the parts about property, but we've picked out the ones more predominantly aimed at property investment, and that will probably affect that part of the property market to a degree. There's some that do cross over a bit more, but wanted to focus on that and really sort of give our opinion. So we'll go through them, we'll discuss them, our thoughts, what that could look like, and really get a good overview. Now look, we're not saying base your vote obviously on the political views from a property standpoint of a particular party, but this is just us looking at it, just so if one of them does come into power, you could maybe get a good idea of what that could look like for the property market. Now, look, these are just in the manifesto. Doesn't mean it's 100% going to happen. This is just what they are proposing, but it's very interesting to hear nonetheless. And look, I definitely recommend, if you are thinking about voting, and you're obviously interested in politics, of course, best to read the manifesto yourself. There's lots in there, which obviously isn't property related, but there's lots in there. And if you are going to vote, it's always good to see who you are voting for, because I think it's changed a bit from years ago where you had your party. It doesn't matter what they did, that was it, colour, if you blue for Conservative, red for Labour, and you would just vote that no matter what. But with how the things have shifted within the political landscape and how the parties come across now, not as it once was. Would you agree, Matt?
Yeah, I'd say I think the people have changed as well, right? We've seen so much change with the likes of, I guess, even like COVID-19, etc., and all of these things. We've had some big events happening, which I think you're right, Toby, in the sense of, I think as a whole, it's kind of, I think some people are kind of more now open to new and other options rather than, as you said, just being fixated on one party.
Yeah.
It's kind of, what are they putting out there? What potentially could make me vote for them, rather than, as you said, maybe just being very honing in on just one. So
well, as it stands at the moment in the polls, Labour are well ahead. So who knows? Looks like people are, well, if you go by the polls, potentially wanting change. But we'll leave the political views and voting where we'd vote for another conversation. But let's jump into it here then. So we'll start with the Conservative manifesto. As I said, this isn't every single detail about what they're proposing for the housing market, but we cover the most relevant ones that we want to sort of go over. So firstly, they're making a bold statement where they will deliver 1.6 million homes in England in the next Parliament. So that's quite a substantial number. Now, we know the promising of delivering homes is something that we had before and we always have, and the actual promise and delivering is
two very different things.
Yeah, for sure. But they do go on to outline how they're going to look to meet that target by some of this in their manifesto. So one thing they noted, so this is more relevant to, so it's got relevance to property investing if you're a property developer, for example. So they're proposing to abolish the legacy EU nutrient neutrality rules. Now, what that is, because a lot of people may not know that, the nutrient neutrality rules basically means new housing developments in certain areas, they should not add more nutrient pollution to the water catchment. So basically it's to do with obviously contaminating and not adding, it's all to do with the environment, which is correct. But what this has done, it's stopping a lot of developments being able to take place in suitable areas. I personally know there's a part near where I live, where I've looked at land to develop, and it just can't be done because there's so much issues at the council in terms of this nutrient neutrality rules. It just means developers can't build in certain things. So what they're saying is that should immediately unlock building 100,000 new homes with local consent, of course. And I think they're proposing that developers pay a one-off mitigation fee, so there's no net additional pollution. So that's one way. Delivering a record number of homes each year on brownfield land in urban areas. And they're going to do that, which is the part I'd love to see the mechanics of, but they're doing this by apparently fast-tracking the route through the planning system for new homes on previously developed land in the 20 largest cities. Now, I think we have a lot of, I wouldn't say we directly have headaches, but we hear a lot of headaches, and in and around what we do, the councils aren't the best when it comes to planning.
Yeah, as you said, I think there's a lot of hurdles to jump over, isn't there?
Yeah.
Which essentially would mitigate and help out with the likes of something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think if you speak to any property investor who's had to deal with the council,
yeah,
a lot of the time it's not the easiest and simplest of processes, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and brownfield land is land that's considered to be sort of had a previous use before, which you can then look to development. I don't know, maybe it was an old shop, old car park, something along those lines, and it's an old bit of land which had a use before, and that's why it's easier for planning to go ahead on brownfield, compared to
replacing, isn't it? What was once there, but better
in a different way.
Exactly.
So they're also looking at supporting local and smaller builders by requiring councils to set land aside for them. So they'll put land aside for smaller builders, which is, I think, quite a good thing, and lifting Section 106 burdens on more smaller sites. So this is like money contribution, stuff like that, which again, from smaller developers, it is obviously a lot tighter for them. You know, they don't always have the economies of scale, which the big builders do, where they can get builds done a lot cheaper. So removing some of those restrictions, what I can see there, they're trying to encourage smaller builders. So, well, actually, this is now feasible. I can actually build on here because I haven't got to pay X, Y, and Z, and it's a lot easier. And they're obviously getting sort of land set aside for them, which hopefully should be a good thing.
I think we've seen firsthand with some of the smaller builders, kind of sometimes the quality can actually be higher than some of these kind of, builders that kind of will build in massive bulk all at once. And as you said, they're for cheaper. I mean, for them, 100% can work out cheaper, but cheaper isn't always the best quality, and the duration and the durableness of what they're using material-wise is not always the best. Whereas we've seen that firsthand with a new development we've got at the moment in terms of a smaller maybe developer.
Yep.
But yet the kind of
the quality
spec
is so much better.
Is so much higher.
Attention to detail.
Exactly. So I think that will potentially be a real good improvement.
I agree. I think that will obviously help the small. Well, should it come in, help the smaller developers?
Yeah.
They are sticking to their guns on greenbelt. So, greenbelt is obviously, we've got all this green land around in the country, which you'll see, and a lot of people say, we need homes. Why is no one building there? Well, look, there are restrictions on greenbelt land where it's very hard to get planning permission to develop on. So what they're saying is they're going to stick to their guns and their commitment to protect the greenbelt from uncontrolled development. So they're not saying that you won't be able to, and like it is today, but it is very hard and difficult too. There's a lot of land out there, which is a shame, which could be developed on, but it is very, very tight and the rules are strict. So what they're saying is they want to ensure they can get homes built where it makes sense. So they're focusing more like on inner cities, which is interesting because they're looking to build in these cities which are probably already built to a degree. They want to build more in there rather than spread it out. So just try and keep obviously the greenery that's in the country. That's in terms of sort of building properties, this bold statement of 1.6 million homes. that's one of the main ones. There are others as well, but that's the main ones they're saying, sort of to push them in the direction. Now, I mean, overall, in terms of the building point of view, do you think that's going to get things absolutely flying and going?
I think it's, I guess, it's one of those things that if it does happen, we'll have to wait and see, because I think there's definitely some really good points to take away from there. But as you said, Toby, I think it's one of those things that we've heard a lot of this in the past, and whether it gets delivered or not is another situation. But I don't know, I feel as though I think whoever comes into power is going to be held a lot more accountable. For some reason this time it feels a little bit more kind of like, if you're saying things, you've got to kind of go through with it, because I feel like the country is very I don't know, at the moment I think with all that's happened in recent times, it's they want change, and they want a good change, and actually seeing the changes being made which are being implemented and talked about kind of previously. So as a whole, I see it as a positive. Whether it happens or not, I think we'll have to wait and see. But even if there was a couple of those points that were obviously that did go ahead, if it was to be the case, I think that's also a benefit as well. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't see anything in there sort of highlighting which is really going to improve the issue that we've currently got in terms of new homes not being built. I think it sounds nice on the face of it, but there's nothing there where I'm looking, well, actually, yes, that will fix the problem.
Yeah,
like the problem's there, it's massive. I mean, building more on brownfield, like that's been there already. You're not you're saying you're going to push for more. You're going to focus stuff on particular locations. Fast track it through, but that hasn't really ever been an issue. Like developing on brownfield, realistically, yes, fast tracking the planning system would be great, but that's just speeding it up. Like if that was the part a massive solution to the problem, building on brownfield to date would have helped solve that. And supporting small local builders. Yeah, everything's in there. It sounds nice, but to me, it's not going to fix the problem of building lots of properties that we need, because we haven't got them. So
yeah.
I would have actually thought they might have mentioned about Greenbelt and actually opening that up a bit more. And maybe putting something around that. So there is still an element of protection, but there's a lot of greenbelt land there. So in short, on that part, in terms of helping build stuff, yeah, I'm not blown away, but they've got a couple of decent things for first-time buyers, which I think is interesting. So they plan to support first-time buyers onto the housing ladder, because as we know, first-time buyers, with the way the market is with prices, saving deposits, prices, they're struggling to get on the ladder. So they want to ensure fairness in the housing system, and they will permanently increase the threshold at which first-time buyers pay stamp duty to £425,000, currently sitting at £300,000. So they're going to up that, which is good to hear. And then secondly, to add into that for first-time buyers, they're going to launch a new and improved Help to Buy scheme, which, if you don't know the Help to Buy scheme, it was there before. They don't do it anymore, but it was where you could go, first-time buyers or purchasers could go to a developer, and they would only have to put in 5% of a deposit, and the government would top up the remaining 20%. So overall, you can get 25% in. So yeah, technically, first-time buyers would go along, with 5%. Government would top up the rest of 20%, and that's how they'd be able to get the property. So I mean, there is some caveats in that. The buyers are paying interest on the money the government loans. When the government, when you sell the property, the government gets their 20% of the current value. So if property values go up, the government obviously makes money in the 20%.
I think there was also a limitation on when you sell as well. You have to be there, for a minimum, I think it was 5 years.
I can't remember. No, I don't think you did have to be there.
Is it?
Okay.
The personal situation, that was the case. And they couldn't leave before then. They wanted to.
Fair enough.
But they were on the Help to Buy originally.
Understood. Okay, so that's two things for first-time buyers. Now, look, I think, me personally, the up in the stamp duty is a good thing.
I agree.
As I said, I don't think it's a magic wand, but it's good. It just means the way the prices are now, opens it up to other areas which are slightly more expensive. It just gives first-time buyers a bit more of a helping hand, in my opinion. And in terms of the Help to Buy, look, I think the Help to Buy, it was good because it helped a lot of buyers get on the market.
It's good for developers as well.
That was the other thing. So I think the only problem is it just helped. Well, didn't help. It was a great developer incentive because it meant the prices of their schemes and developments would push up even more. And I'd kind of say the solution you put it there, like that solution, is kind of one of the problems in the first place. And the problem is prices rising too fast and pricing by first-time buyers out, especially obviously, and then they need higher deposit levels. By introducing a scheme which did encourage price inflation, it could be counterintuitive, but we'll see. It's good to hear for first-time buyers. Obviously, good. Then look, I'm not being funny. 5% is a lot easier to save than 25. So,
of course, for the majority of people, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly that. So, first-time buyers, potentially, if Conservatives get in, you've got those benefits. There was another thing I didn't mention on there, but they're also talking about, I think, the mortgage guarantee scheme, which is where first-time buyers can use 5% down as a deposit, and the government will basically back the mortgage for them to help them get so basically it's a 95% mortgage. That's been around already, which they brought in. I speak to mortgage brokers. I haven't seen it have a massive effect. No. And also, before they introduced that, 95% mortgages for residential buyers were a thing as well anyway. So that wasn't really setting the world alight. But yeah, that's first-time buyers. So, which would be, and the reason I sort of pick them when talking about property market and property developing is because obviously that will jolt the property market a bit. Because you get first-time buyers coming back on, it'll get things moving a lot quicker. Ultimately, if they do bring those, the stamp duty is an added benefit, but the Help to Buy, you ultimately, if we look at the trends and data from last time, it should mean that you start to see a bit more price inflation because it starts to open up the market a bit more. And now remember, these developers, when they go in and sell for the higher prices, the one thing it does do, which not great if you're trying to buy to live in yourself, but if you're an investor and own a property around there, it does push the prices up. So, could lead to a bit of a positive note for prices. Now, on taxation, so a few on property taxation. We've really been hammered with taxation as investors, but they're looking to protect family homes from higher tax under the family home tax guarantee. So they won't increase the number of council tax bans, undertake an expensive council tax reevaluation, or cut council tax discounts. So what they're saying is basically they're not going to increase council tax or bring more in. Or reevaluate to bring in more expensive council tax. So that's pretty good. Not from property investor point of view. If you've got a HMO or a short let accommodation you're covering the council tax, that is quite a good thing to hear because you don't want that going sky high. And another tax one is they're going to, they'll maintain private residential relief, which I don't even know why they've put this, but they're saying, they're going to keep the fact that when you sell your private residence, you're protected from capital gains tax, which I don't know why that wouldn't be the case anyway. Obviously, when you sell an investment property as it currently stands, you have to pay capital gains tax on the profit made from the purchase price that you bought at and sold at. They're not going to increase the rate or level of stamp duty to support homeowners. So to support homeowners, they're saying, look, we're not increasing the percentage of stamp duty. They're not going to try and tax more on stamp duty, which is good. It's good for the property market as well, because we know when it's more expensive to buy with things such as stamp duty, that can discourage and slow things down in the market. And another thing, which is quite an interesting one, which we will talk about, is they will introduce a 2-year temporary capital gains tax relief for landlords who sell to their existing tenants.
Yeah, I saw this one the other day pop up.
So basically, what that means is, if I'm a landlord selling my property and I sell it to my tenant, I don't pay capital gains tax. So there's a 2-year temporary relief. So I see the logic, because it's going to encourage landlords to sell
to more likely a family or
to their tenants, pretty much.
Yeah.
So they will encourage them
so they can get on the ladder.
Yeah. So what that will do is, if I'm a landlord, I'm going, well, is it worth me selling now, because I'm going to have to pay a big chunk of capital gains?
You do get it, don't you, sometimes, where tenants are wanting to, they love the location of where it, and realistically they do know at any time if you wanted to sell, it could be, obviously they'd have to lose it, so they might consider buying, which I do think probably does cross quite a lot of people's minds.
I think, again, on paper, good idea, because it encourages landlords to sell, to free up a property, to sell to someone who's going to homeowner occupy. Yeah. And it means they have to sell to the tenant, which is good. So you're not, chucking the tenants out. What I would say is, I do know of tenants wanting to buy properties, or they've spoken to landlords. How many times that's actually happened? Not that many. So, yeah, on paper it's a good idea. Is it going to fix anything? I'm not so sure. Now, we'll just round off on these last ones before we run over to Labour. So they're looking to cap the ground rents at £250 of leasehold properties, reduce them to peppercorn over time. They're going to end the misuse of forfeiture, so leaseholders don't lose their property. So, yeah, basically if you don't pay, or you obviously... you basically forfeit your lease or something like that, or the freeholder wants you to forfeit your lease and take control, they're basically going to put in stuff to stop that, and stop any unfair situations that may arise. They're continuing to push with the Renters Reform Bill to deliver fairness, as they say, in the rental market and for landlords and renters alike. They're going to deliver the court reforms necessary to fully abolish Section 21 and strengthen other grounds for landlords to evict private tenants guilty of antisocial behaviour. So
we had an episode on that, didn't we?
We did, yeah. So Section 21 is basically where you can give your tenant notice without any real reason, and they'd have to vacate. They want to abolish that. So then you would have to use one of the other sections, which means there has to be reason for you evicting the tenant. And sometimes that can mean going sort of the legal route potentially. But again, not as scary as it sounds. And they're saying that they're going to put the reforms in, they're going to strengthen the courts, put the right stuff in so this can move a lot quicker, which sounds great. But yeah, again, I'm just very skeptical about how that will work out. And as a landlord, is that something that you would be concerned about?
A little bit. I'd be interested, because I know we talked about I think there was 2 other sections that would combat what essentially was the loss of Section 21. But overall, as you said, it's minimal, the change, I think, in terms of really having to decide if you're going to become a landlord or not. It wouldn't put me off, put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really bother me too much. I mean, look, you lose a little bit of flexibility where you can just give the notice, but there's other sections there which you can utilise to give the notice. Not like you can't get your tenant out. Yeah. You just can't get them out for no apparent reason anymore, which I think's pretty fair, to be honest. As long as you utilise one of the other ones, shouldn't be much of an issue. And lastly, they want to ensure councils have the powers they need to manage the uncontrolled growth of holiday lets.
This will be an interesting one.
Now, they've spoke about it before, obviously.
We've seen a hell of a lot of increase, haven't we, in the serviced accommodation space.
Yeah.
Where we've seen it in, obviously, I know it's been a little while now, but in London, they've obviously got a 90-day rule.
Yep.
Where they set a cap on, obviously, how many days of the year you can rent it out as a holiday let, which I think I've heard of so many people apparently don't stick to it, but it's in place. Whether you get caught or not is another story. But would we see that elsewhere? Has that worked for London? I don't know. I think we would have to see how that affects. I think in terms of from a property investment perspective, I think it depends on the investor, right? Yeah. I think a lot of investors nowadays are getting wowed by these high-yielding properties, and it needs to be 10% or above, etc. Yep. So I believe if you're someone who's in the game for the medium to the long term, it's not really going to affect you, is it? But I think if you're someone that wants to kind of benefit from maybe the higher returns, etc., then yeah, it might sting your holiday let and you might have to go back to a long-term let. But I think these changes, they're not going to happen overnight, are they? If they were to, maybe they'll introduce it in another area, or they might even change it completely.
It doesn't. It's not saying that they're going to ban them or anything. It just means that they're giving the control to the councils. I mean, I do worry about giving more control to councils because they can't even run themselves. Look at like Croydon that going bust and Birmingham Council going bust.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, look, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But that's conservative. So on a whole, from what I can see there, not really anything that blows me away conservative, where as a property landlord, developer, investor, etc., there's nothing really that I think, oh yeah, look, based on your housing policies, I'm definitely going to vote. And as I said, there is a few more bits in there which aren't property investing specific, but yeah, hasn't blown me away. What about you?
Same as you, to be fair, mate. I can't say there's anything that would put me off from continuing to buy.
Yeah.
But I also think as well, we'll just have to wait and see if they do come into power, kind of if they look to actually implement certain things there.
Yeah.
And if they stick to their word.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on to Labour then.
Yep.
Let's run through Labour. So their target of new homes is 1.5 million. So a little bit under Conservatives' 1.6. So they're going to deliver 1.5
Maybe they're being
on the
more
next Parliament.
conservative.
Oh, you didn't. You didn't, did you? Wow.
That was actually a very good.
That was
joke.
good. Have you been practicing that?
No, honestly, off the dome.
Wow. No, impressive.
Thank you.
That's definitely got to make it as a short clip. So they're gonna straight away, they're gonna come in and they're gonna update the national policy planning framework, including restoring mandatory housing targets. Mandatory housing targets, great idea. Enforcing them is another thing. The only thing I do like about that is if maybe a local council has mandatory housing targets, then they may be more inclined to think, well, actually, we're far off our target. Let's be a bit more open to some planning permissions that are coming in. Whereas at the moment, they kind of do what they want and like, meh. No, I'm on a bad mood. No, yeah. Thank you. But no, that does sound pretty good. They're going to take tough action to ensure that They will take tough action to ensure that planning authorities have up-to-date local plans and reform and strengthen the presumption in favour of sustainable development. Yeah, again, hasn't blown me away there. But I get what they're trying to do. Labour will support local authorities by funding additional planning officers for increasing the rate of stamp duty surcharge paid by non-UK residents. So they're basically saying, right, we need more planning officers, which, yeah, I think getting more efficient planning officers would be easier. But yeah, so the more planning officers hopefully speed up. But they're saying they're going to pay for them by increasing stamp duty surcharge by non-UK residents. Currently, if you're a non-UK buying in the UK, then you have to pay a 3% surcharge on top of the standard stamp duty. So that's going to really hit the pockets.
Is it not 2? 2% surcharge, 3% for UK, and then 2 on top, isn't it? 5.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry. So yes, 3% surcharge normal, and then 2% surcharge added on top for non-UK. So what they're saying is they're going to up that, which is quite interesting.
Could be interesting. Maybe it might sway overseas investors slightly. I don't think it's going to be a massive difference. Depends how big the increase is.
That would be interesting, though. Would be interesting. Yeah, maybe gives more domestic investors more of a chance as well, to be fair.
Well, we know of other countries, don't we, that are very pro their own kind of, I guess, people.
Sort of domestic residents,
really benefit from
which
certain situations.
Which does make sense.
Which could be,
that's okay. That's fair enough. Be interesting how that plays out and what percentage they're going to add on. Labour's going to take a brownfield first approach. So they're going to prioritise the development of previously used land wherever possible. So, and they're going to do this by fast-tracking approval of urban brownfield sites. So very similar to Conservative in that terms. You know, they're sort of going hard on the brownfield sites. They'll take a more strategic approach to greenbelt land designation and release to build more homes in the right places. So whereas Conservatives are saying no, we're sticking to our guns on greenbelt, not making it hard to build there, Labour are saying they're going to take a easier approach. So good.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to it, definitely. I think for the property market, of course, I think we need more properties as such. But then again, I do understand the whole obviously green side to the UK and wanting to keep it.
They're not saying all though. They're going to do it in the right
they would
places.
consider more.
Designate some.
I think to be fair, at some point it would need to happen, right? We've only got a certain amount of land, so
Yeah.
as I guess the population keeps on increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, if you're a developer and you've got land banked in Grebo areas, you're probably rubbing your hands now, thinking, "Please be my area." Right. What else they got here? Labour will deliver the biggest increase in social and affordable house building in a generation. So they want to build more affordable homes and social homes, which that's a pretty good thing. I mean, although not technically property investor related, it's very property market orientated. And look, we know sort of social houses and affordable houses and properties there's a massive lack of them. So I do like this actually. That's if they can do that, again, it'd be interesting to see how they do it. It'd be a pretty good thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting as well, though. I think as well to see the quality. They're saying more affordable homes. What's the standard going to be like as well?
Well, more on the affordable homes, they're saying that they will strengthen planning obligations to ensure new developments provide more affordable homes. Now, I would say that may be a bit of a problem, and again, counteracts you wanting to build more homes. I say this because I know developers are always concerned with the social. Although it's needed, sometimes it can really cut into sort of profitability of developers' sites, which means they sometimes don't see it feasible as developing there. So
Put them off.
yeah, so although that's great to hear for, social and affordable housing, could it be, counterproductive and actually
Might put off more people then?
Yeah, because obviously it doesn't always make the site stack up, but we will see. They want to ensure that the country is building more high quality, well designed, sustainable homes. Yep, that's good to hear. Implement solutions to unlock the building of homes affected by nutrient neutrality without weakening environmental protections. So similar to Conservatives, they mentioned the nutrient neutrality. Now they haven't said how they're going to do that, so that would be interesting. And they want to bring in a permanent. I'll spit it out.
Permanent in Birmingham together.
Yeah, permanent, comprehensive mortgage guarantee scheme to support first-time buyers who struggle to save for a large deposit with lower mortgage costs.
That could be decent.
Yeah, I mean, we know mortgage is hard for first-time buyers. Be interesting to see how that would work.
I know quite a few people actually know that have had quite a lot of mortgage issues with, especially some that have been on variable rates, etc. That over the past couple of years, it's absolutely shot up, or they've had to fix as it the time to renew's come up, and they've had to fix in quite. And it's just not affordable for people. So
yeah,
could be a benefit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, that's good for the property market. If you've got, if you get first-time buyers back in and buying more, that is going to see the property market sort of creep up again. I'm pretty sure of that, because you're opening it up to a bigger pool of buyers.
Yeah.
You're bringing in more buyers, more demand. Obviously, supply's not where it needs to be. It's most likely going to upward trend on the prices. Lastly, one of the last ones we've got from the main points we've picked out is they will look to work with local authorities to give first-time buyers the chance to buy homes and end the farce of entire developments being sold off to international investors before houses are even built. So first-time buyers will get the chance to buy a house first, rather than sell off a whole development to international investors. So again, from a developer point of view, you might sit there and go, well, that's my options closing down a bit there. I don't like the sound of that. Could put you off for a specific scheme, because could mean to less money. But yeah, interesting to see what they're doing. Is that encouraging building? I don't know. It's definitely going to help first-time buyers by giving them the first refusal. But I mean, that's a lot of labours. So what would you summarise there after listening to all that?
I think there's certain elements of it that I have a similar. I think I do have a similar overall opinion on the Conservatives and Labour are very similar in the sense of let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I think that Labour have come in very much so, I think, more on the people side of wanting to really encourage the affordability of homes, etc., for everyday people, etc., which I think is a positive. Yep. As you said, I think there's some good elements to take out of it, but I do agree as well. I think, would that scare off some people that are currently in the process of doing works and thinking of maybe I'll build some more homes, etc., developer-wise, whether they be small or large developers, it may do. I think probably one of the most interesting thing for me anyway out of that whole take of Labour is the overseas. It seems like they really want to
keep stuff within the country, help residents and
which we haven't really seen too much of a crazy difference, have we, before?
Well, we get a lot of...
We have got a hell of a lot of overseas buyers now in the UK.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good for the property market, good for the economy as well. But like you said, if it's pushing out the domestic buyers, then maybe it makes sense.
I think we've seen already, it's changed a lot of the market to very heavily pro-renters, hasn't it, compared to maybe buyers, whereas they may be trying to flip that on its head a little bit.
I didn't see anything, I could be wrong, but I didn't see anything about a renters reform bill in there, which is quite interesting. But I think the golden question I'll ask you is, if you were voting based on property policy in the manifestos, who would you be voting for, Labour or Conservative? No, I'm not saying... No, I'm just saying, again, this isn't to come across like who are you voting for. This is more, after what we just read there, you're voting purely based on these housing policies that they're putting in and commitments in the manifesto. Who would you be voting for based on that?
It is a hard one. But for me, I probably would... I feel like from your take anyway, what I've got, you're a little bit liking the Labour. That's my personal opinion of what I think of you, which will come to you after.
Oh, no, I never said you could ask me.
Yeah, we can ask you after.
There you go.
I think based off of it all, based on, I guess, the circumstances and also the role that we're in property, I probably would say Conservatives.
Oh, okay.
Personally. Just, but I wouldn't say that's 100%. That's based purely on, obviously, what we've heard today.
Yeah.
It's not to say that's my vote, guys.
Okay.
And what about yourself?
Do you know what? I actually don't know, because...
I need one answer.
I know, but I'll give you my reasons why I'm saying that. Is because there's nothing in either of those, and again, this is just based on their sort of housing policies in the manifesto, but there's nothing there that makes me go, that's the one for me.
Yeah, but I mean, they're all trying to make small changes. Nothing's going to be a major change, I don't think. I think we were never going to see something that you were going to be like, yes, that's the one.
Just thinking...
For me, I looked at it in terms of like these little changes. How is that going to affect?
I'll tell you what, I would probably say, going by the manifesto documents, that's on, and based on the policies property related on there, I would sway to Conservative. The reason being, I can see more of a way they're trying to do things. I'm not saying it's going to fix the problem, and that's great, but obviously. I think Labour's is a bit more, we'd love to do this, but I couldn't really see any substance in there that makes me think, yes, you'll get the job done. So that's the only reason I'd say.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Okay. So, as we said, that's a very brief summary. We've already run over them. We usually to, just because there was quite a lot in there, and we didn't even have all of the stuff on the manifestos.
I think that gives people a very
good understanding. But I just recommend going to read them. Like, if you are interested and you want to vote, or maybe you're not going to vote, but you want to see potentially what the next party might have in store for you, should they get in. Get the manifestos. They're easy to find online. Read it and make up your own conclusions. All right.
Yeah, brilliant.
Sounds good. Right. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.